Look, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act. We talked about it last week, but one of the key pillars of that is that there's a $300 billion of expected revenues coming in, and we essentially turned around and just gave that back to a very, very small segment of the American population. Bloomberg's analysis was that it's going to create somewhere between 0.1 and 0.3% extra inflation on top of all of that. And so, you really have to ask yourself, like, what was the White House trying to accomplish? I think number one, they made a campaign promise. And so, I think Biden needed to make sure that he fulfilled that. But nobody was really happy, right? The progressives wanted something extreme. Everybody else said, this is not really the right thing to do because it doesn't really solve the root cause of what we're dealing with. If it would have been much better if you'd said, hey, listen, we're going to make this stuff expungible on bankruptcy. That would have been really useful. What happens if you actually tried to, I don't know, you were from the inner city and you worked your ass off, you became a doctor, you have $300,000 in debt, but now you're a resident and you make $126,000. Well, yeah. Now you're kind of SOL here. So there's a lot of folks that they probably wanted to help that they didn't help. Then there's all the blue collar folks who are like, why this giveaway only to these folks? Then there are the people that paid off their loans thinking, why did I pay my loans off? Then there's the incentives that it creates for colleges, which is, well, I'm just going to keep jacking up tuition because if they did it once, they may do it again. So all of these things, I think, are sort of a little bit of a head scratcher. And then the last thing, which we can talk about at the end, is I don't think this is what gets people out to vote. And I don't think it's what people care about ultimately at the polls, which if there was a political calculation to make, that's important. And specifically, when you look at what happened last night in a bunch of these districts, every progressive candidate got absolutely shellacked. All the signs are like, this may not have been the smartest thing to do, but I don't think Joe Biden had a choice because he made the promise and he had to live up to it.
This is absolutely moronic. I think that the fact that 8 million households are eligible for this relief and $10,000 to $20,000 is relief is provided to a minority of Americans is exactly what Chamath said, which is kind of distorted politics at its worst. This is a $300 billion bill to the US taxpayer. And the ultimate beneficiary of that bill, while we all might want to say it's the people that are getting debt relief that have taken out these student loans, that money was transferred to somewhere. And you know where it was transferred to? University endowments and the profit and the pockets of for-profit educational institutions. If there were a free market for education in the United States and the government was not involved in the process of funding and supporting the educational infrastructure in this country, individual citizens would have the right and the obligation to make decisions about whether or not the money that they're spending on tuition actually has a positive ROI for them. By spending $10,000 or $100,000, am I going to make more than that much money back when I graduate? And unfortunately, we've lulled our citizenry, we've lulled our country into complacency, where that decision and that calculus is no longer required. Because Uncle Sam is there to give you all the money you want to go to college, and the hungry, money-hungry institutions that are there to educate you are taking that money, putting it in their endowments or in the pockets of their shareholders. And at the end of the day, it turns out that that decision may not have been the best decision. And we're no longer holding ourselves individually to take responsibility for the decisions that we've made. And we're creating misincentives because of the government programs that have been created. By telling people you need to get a higher education, the government is going to pay for it for you, and it doesn't matter if it does or doesn't work. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, we're just going to pay it back for you anyway. And there's a middle class in the United States of America that is going to end up paying the tax bill primarily, because that's where most tax dollars come from, for the minority of people that made a bad decision. And it's not necessarily their fault. They made that decision because the infrastructure and the system was set up to tell them, go to college, get a good degree, you'll end up having a good life, you'll make more money. And the reality is that they aren't and that they don't. The ROI for many of these degrees has been negative. You make less money than you would have if you were actually in the workforce, earning an on-the-ground experience and progressing your career. You do not need a degree in philosophy or history or German studies to be able to go and be effective in the technology workforce or in the services workforce. And I think that we're seeing that play out. The biggest challenge now is if we're going to provide this loan relief and not reform the educational infrastructure and the requirements for whether or not an educational system is eligible for support from the federal loan program, we are not actually solving the fundamental problem. We are keeping this gravy train running, and we're not actually getting to the root cause of where this money is flowing. And this is exactly what happens. I will rehash my point that I've made 100 times. At the end of empires, everyone sees that the money train is leaving the station, and everyone jumps and grabs what they can. And that's exactly what's going on. We think that we're a rich nation, but we're becoming complacent. And this is unfortunate, and it's a really sad sign. I think we need to fix this educational infrastructure. We need to make eligibility requirements for whether or not loans are actually going to have a positive ROI for students. And then individuals ultimately need to be educated on that and held accountable to whether or not they're making the right decisions for themselves.
I really think people do not understand how meaningful of a change it would be if you were able to discharge your student debt in bankruptcy. It is the most powerful market function we could create to make these universities more accountable. And I think if you guys look at my annual letter, I put a chart in there, but part of the problem that we have in these universities, these leading universities, is that these have become graveyards. Okay, there is a gerontocracy that runs these things with an iron fist. And as these folks have stayed in these jobs for enormous amounts of time now, 40, 50 plus years, the average person is in their mid to late 70s now who are the administrators of our leading institutions. They are focused on running up endowments, and they are focused on the power and the influence that comes with their position. So I implore anybody who has any ability to actually achieve this change, there should not be a single logical person that should not support the ability to discharge student debt in bankruptcy. And you will identify the insider establishment by those that try to stop you.
You will expose them 100%. And I just want to put a closing thing here for the people listening who have young people making these decisions. When we all went to college as Gen Xers, college was $9,000, $10,000, $11,000 a year in tuition. And if you came out with 10 or 20K and you had an average job or a salary of double or triple that when you graduated, it seemed like a good deal. The ROI broke. Now, market forces are at work here. I just want to point out two of them. Number one, there is a website, Grow with Google, you can just look up right now. They're allowing people to get professional certificates, and this is free. And if you could pull up Grow with Google, they've identified 5 different paths to jobs. One of them is digital marketing and e-commerce. One's IT support, data analytics, project management, and UX design. They have essentially looked at what's needed in the world and aligned a 3 to 6 months online course for free that'll get you a job. And you, if you have executive function, the ability to sit down, shut up, and learn, can do this first before you make the decision to go $100,000 in debt and then get a $50,000 a year job. Here, these jobs average, 60, 70, 80K a year, and you can do it for free. The next piece that the private market is doing, you and I looked into this, Chamath, actually together, ISAs, income sharing agreements. We were lucky enough to invest in a company called Meritas. They are providing ISAs for a college, Colorado Mountain College, for nursing. What this means is they will give you your tuition for free. It's educate now, pay later. If you go to one of these colleges for nursing, you get educated and then you pay it back, and you're capped at paying back like 2 times whatever the loan is, 1.5, whatever the college decides. But they take the risk, as opposed to Harvard with $40 billion that takes no risk. And so the free market, I think, can also solve this, but you have to sit down with your kids and say, let's have an ROI calculation.